Well, at that point, I think I'll get started, conscious that we need to be aware of time. And the first thing to say is welcome to our first webinar in the series, Thought Leadership on the Security Implications of National Lockdowns. Now, one thing's for sure, that in this time of crisis, we need to take the opportunity to think about what is going on. And the idea of thought leadership, and we've been involved with this for a number of years now, is to inspire new thinking, to engage with controversy, perhaps, to critique what is happening, to debate different views, and to think differently and come up with ideas about how we move forward constructively. And what we're going to do is that this webinar today will be made available on our YouTube channel, Security and Crime as from Tomorrow. And I'll also do a blog and circulate that as well, and that will be available. A bit more about that at the end. And the idea of this panel of experts that I've got is that we were going to present to you views from around the world about what's going on. And then we're going to talk through what some of these issues are. The idea is that in 45 minutes, we're going to get an action-packed sense of where we are, where we go, and how we do it. And I'm just going to introduce my elite panel. I'm just going to ask them to say very briefly who they are. Start with you, Roger.
Hello, this is Roger Warwick. Thank you, Martin, for the invitation. I represent a company in Italy called Pyramid Temi Group. We are a travel risk management service company, and we operate around the world, mostly in Africa and Asia.
Sorry, Roger.
The situation in Italy. Italy is the first country out of the Orient to be hit with coronavirus. It would appear now that this started in December and not in January, which is normally been considered. We don't really know that, that's just theories. The things we know are that Italy has an excellent front line. We've got excellent medics, excellent paramedics, excellent ambulances, a very weak and insufficient supply chain, lack of protective equipment, lack of beds, lack of ventilators, and an indecisive head office. Italy has a weak government. This government has made mistakes like everybody else, and with hindsight, we can easily see the mistakes they've made. But the main mistake I feel they've made is they've been trying to please the public too much and have not taken strong enough action earlier. Lockdown's been accepted. There's not a big, apart from the inconvenience of lockdown, lockdown has been accepted. The only beef, the only trouble the general public have with the government is they didn't do it sooner. They did it bit by bit, and we're going to see it lasting for a number more months. And they are still making announcements that everybody understands are far too optimistic to be true. Security, private security for the moment. Guarding companies are working more than before because factories have been closed down. So they don't just have to look after them at night, they have to guard them in the daytime, over the weekends as well. Schools have been closed down. Home burglaries are down because everybody's at home. Risk of social unrest. There's a high risk of social unrest, mainly in the poorer areas of southern Italy, where poor people have been promised benefits, but the very first benefits have only arrived this afternoon, if they have arrived. Southern Italy has a number of people, many hundreds of thousands of people who work in the black economy. Benefits have been offered and been promised to those that have been laid off from employment, but those in the black economy, how can they prove that they had income up until yesterday? Companies have been promised money as well. Our company's been promised money. Maybe it will arrive sometime, but it certainly will not arrive soon. There's a risk of increasing shoplifting in food stores, followed by violent raids. There is no security in food stores at the moment and in supermarkets because security is provided by companies with investigations license. Companies with investigations license have not been given permission to continue working. Outside, we have the corporate contract guard companies who are not allowed to enter the supermarkets because it's a place of work and they aren't. I see Elizabeth's name to come up now, so I'll move on to the rest later on. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. So let's move to Elizabeth Sheldon. Elizabeth, just a bit about who you are and then your thoughts.
Okay, thank you, Martin. So I'm Elizabeth Sheldon. I'm Executive Director of a company called Evidence Talks, which is part of CCL Group. We're digital forensic specialists. We develop digital forensic technology in evidence talks. I'm also Vice President of Security for the aerospace, defence and security industry of the United Kingdom. So in the UK, there is absolutely no doubt the impact of the coronavirus on crime, law and order will be high. We're hoping it will be short term. It's shaking up our society, it's shaking up our families and our normal way of life. And this will result in a shock to the economy and to all our normal social norms. Pressures on our families through domestic violence will increase, and local communities as the demands on police and other emergency services are perhaps channeled elsewhere. However, the police will have less demand on their time through other functions such as mass gatherings and traffic and so on, as there is a complete lockdown in the United Kingdom. We will no doubt look for inter-agency assistance from the military, perhaps from the third sector, from civil associations, Neighbourhood Watch and other organisations like Mumsnet, for example, to look after the mental well-being of people who are isolated at home. Crimes that involve social activity, such as alcohol-related offences in public, will diminish, but as I've already said, others like domestic violence are expected to rise, and we expect a rise in crimes against children as well. The British people have a great history of reacting well together in times of crisis, and this particular crisis has shown this to be true. Britain has a well-practiced crisis management procedure. We've had many terrorist attacks and other disasters, such as the Grenfell Tower disaster 18 months or so ago. And so we put these plans into action and to the test. Emergency planning for the British government, and in fact, planning and testing for a global pandemic is well versed, because we put this on our national risk register in 2008. So in fact, the British government's response to this crisis has been, in most people's opinion, very good indeed. We had lockdown much earlier than you did, Roger, in Italy, and the public has responded extremely well. The police will support the government through this, crisis, perhaps to other detriment of other areas of society. We are a liberal society, and we're being asked to follow extraordinary voluntary procedures, but we are seeing some fines being measured against people who are not obeying the rules. So people who are going out on non-essential journeys are being stopped by the police and fined. People who are gathering in groups of more than 2 in our shopping centres or in our parks are being fined, and this is something we are definitely not used to in British society. Our neighbourhood teams may in fact come under pressure, because policing will be diverted from our neighbourhoods to other areas, shopping centres, supermarkets and so on. They are seeing police presences there, but the shopping supermarkets rather have exhibited remarkable procedures, marking out areas where people can queue, how many people can go in the store at any one time. Social distancing is really working. We saw a lot of panic buying in previous weeks, but this has settled down now with purchasing and queuing, and there's no dissent in the British public with this. In fact, the shops have got plenty of stock. Fears of rioting, arson and social disorder have not yet shown their face, but the riots of 2011 have taught us much about how to disseminate public distress of this kind, and we're very hopeful that we won't see this kind of activity. The model of UK policing working by consent is likely to continue. Economic measures put in by the UK government are extremely generous across the board, self-employed people as well as companies. There will be people who will slip through the net, and it's possible that these people may start exhibiting signs of social unrest. They will do shoplifting, as Roger mentioned. They may target some of our more vulnerable members of society, the elderly, through social engineering, knocking on doors, requesting or saying they're medical people and go in and rob. And of course, digital crime, which is my area of expertise, will undoubtedly rise, and we are already seeing a huge rise in cyber criminality. Social engineering, phishing, all sorts of things, not only individuals, but businesses. My own company received a very credible email the other day from the Police Federation saying here was an invoice that was paid, and I knew full well it wasn't, so we reported it as spam, but they are clever and we need to be on our guards. I've probably talked for more than 4 minutes. I have more to say, but like Roger, we'll come back later.
Yeah, thank you. I now move to Rajiv. Rajiv in India, where, of course, Rajiv, we're hearing that you've just gone into lockdown and have got additional problem of lots of people. Perhaps you could summarise where you are with it in India.
Thank you, Martin, and thank you. This is a good initiative and opportunity to understand what's happening worldwide, and especially with India, because we are slightly behind the rest of you, especially, we started this problem say about a month and a half when it started going, big size, bigger in number. Just for your information, I would like to give you some statistics here. As of now, and I'm saying about 18 minutes ago, the number of confirmed cases in India is 1,565, out of which 1,374 cases are active. 144 have recovered from now. That's about 9% of the people have recovered as of now, and we have seen about 48 deaths in this period of time, which is about 3% of the people who have confirmed. See, the problem that we foresee today is that we have not done quite a number of tests as of now. The tests that have been done till today are about 39,000, less than 39,000. And if we see out of that, 1,565 cases are positive. So we do not know as of now that are we in stage 3 as yet or not. But what we have seen in last 4 or 5 days, India is under complete lockdowns. Today is the 7th day. India is under complete lockdown. Today is the 7th day, and we have 14 more days. So it was a 3 weeks lockdown. Now, what is happening here is that we have lot of migrant workers. India being a vast country and number 2 population in the world. There are a lot of people who have come out of their hometowns, smaller cities, to work in metros. New Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, Chennai, etc. These are larger cities, and people have come out from their villages, from their hometowns to work here. In last 4 or 5 days, we have seen a sudden spike of these people going back home, because since everything is shut, and everything is shut meaning the shopping malls are shut, the cinema halls are shut, the retailers are shut. So the people who are temporary workers or who are migrant workers, for example, the drivers, the delivery agents, the people who are working in retail sector, people who are working in the event industry, the people who are working in the construction industry, security guards, Now, since the businesses are under lockdown, the situation of security guards is very ambiguous. Unlike Elizabeth, as you said, that that even the businesses are down, but the security guards are more. But here, since the businesses are less, the corporates are shut down, the malls are shut down. People are also reducing the number of security guards deployed at their premises. Now, these are contractual workers, and when you kind of unemploy them and do not provide the duty for them, they have no way of earning. So the first thought that everybody is having in its mind is that let's go back home, and that is what is happening on the interstate bus terminals. That is what is happening on the railway stations. That has been one of the major issues that we have, keeping in mind the fact that we haven't conducted as many tests as yet. Another thing to note down in India is that about 90% of the jobs in India are under MSME category, micro, small, medium enterprise category. We have about 69 million MSME industries in India, and which gives about 90% of the jobs. Now, when there are no jobs, when there is no work, there are more set of people who are getting unemployed. All the government is doing its bit, whether in the center or in the state, to take care of these people who would get unemployed. The larger companies, the bigger companies, for example, the Tata, the Dalmia, the Birla groups, etc., they have assured that there will be there won't be a problem to the workers there. But how long is the question? How long is the question? Because we do not know as yet that are we in stage 3 or not. Travel and tourism, if we talk about, I'm just giving an example of one of the industries. Travel and tourism employ about 38 million people here. The business is completely shut down, and they are kind of jobless. Aviation, of course, is a part. Automobile company. So see, businesses are going down. There are more and more people who are kind of jobless. There are more and more people who want to go back to their hometowns, who go back to their villages. So that's another kind of a panic situation. We are not equipped enough, or we haven't conducted as many tests as required. But for sure, as of now, the data says that we are not into stage 3. So if we still have 2 weeks of lockdown more in the first phase. So if we are able to manage well, but however, the majority of the population, the majority of the citizens are responding extremely well to the lockdown. Only the essential services are working, but you have to go out to get your daily goods, and there are minor number of people who are still on the road and who still have to go out. But so far, looks like that the situation looks like under control. But the bottom line is that we haven't tested enough, but still looks like under control.
Thank you, Rajiv. Thank you. Now, one of the countries that's traditionally been good at security, I think, and well renowned for it, is the Benelux region. And from there, we got Miguel. And I'd be interested in your thoughts about how well things are going there. Miguel, to you.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. My name is Michel de Jong. I'm the head of global security for Cofra Holding, and I'm also the chairman of the Benelux chapter of ACES International. Cofra Group employs about 50,000 people across our retail operations, our real estate holdings, and our investment companies. We're also involved globally in charitable activities. Q1 of this year was disrupted already, but the second quarter of 2020 will be totally dominated by the COVID-19 pandemic and responses from national authorities to the global crisis. April is set to be particularly challenging, with international shutdown of travel, business operations going virtual where possible, and supply chains in disarray. Those of us that have managed travel risk management programs were in an ideal position to take the lead on a coordinated approach to information sharing about the global spread of the novel coronavirus and the ensuing logistical and travel limitations. I would expect these security professionals to still be in the center of well-balanced crisis management teams that deal with the COVID-19 pandemic. Such a senior leadership group needs to combine the expertise of finance, risk, HR, communications, IT in certain companies, as well as security. Stepping back to the Netherlands. The novel coronavirus has spread across the Netherlands by now, like in most countries. At this point, there's typically 3 possible approaches or scenarios for any country to respond. The first one is to allow the virus to run its course totally unchecked. And if we do take steps to prevent it, if we do not take steps to prevent it, the virus will spread faster and faster, and healthcare systems will be totally swamped. Now, that is clearly not a desirable scenario. The second approach one could take is the maximum containment of the virus. The approach is also known as a full lockdown. That means shutting down everything completely and requiring everybody to stay in their homes. Such a rigorous approach may initially seem like an attractive option. The major disadvantage is that it has to be maintained for an extended period of time, not just days or weeks, but essentially months or even longer. That would have huge consequences for schools, for the economy, and etc. And you're very likely that the virus will simply start spreading again once the lockdown is over. The risk remains there until a drug or vaccine for the virus is available. In the Netherlands, we opt for a different scenario. Let's call it scenario 3 here. We're trying to maximize the control over the virus. That means working together to ensure that people follow the hygiene rules, avoid public venues, and practice social and physical distancing. The virus will not be able to spread as quickly, and we can spread out the infection over a longer period. That leads to controlled spread amongst the group. And we certainly hope, that there are 3 strategic advantages to this approach. Most people will experience only minor symptoms and recover from the virus without medical assistance. People will build immunity, so the virus has less and less chance to make other people sick, and the hospitals, nursing homes, and our caretakers are not overwhelmed. Although there was some reluctance to take all this serious, we now see that the population follows the guidance of our National Institute for Public Health and the Prime Minister's advice. The number of reported hospital admissions and the number of deceased COVID-19 patients that have been reported appears to be increasing less rapidly than could have been expected without more serious lockdown measures in place. Now, it will become apparent this week already whether the curve is indeed flattening out. We have to wait and see. At the moment, we got 12,000 confirmed cases in the Netherlands, 4,000 people admitted into hospitals, and about 900 people have died already. So, what are the security implications of national lockdowns? Let me briefly name 5, and we may return to these afterwards of some approaches that my security department is taking. One of them is the continued unrest about the COVID-19 spread. There's a lot of fake news out there, and people continue to search for reliable medical opinions and good sources of information. Second, increasing stress about the world in and post COVID-19. Although the Dutch approach is not that strict, it still effectively cuts out a lot of interaction between people. Those that still need to go out for work are concerned about their health. Those that can work from home are more or less confined to their apartments and homes, where they face the stress of a work-life balance, a school-work balance, and the general stress that comes from babies, toddlers, teenagers, and spouses. The massive impact of the pandemic in developing countries is the third concern we can have, particularly looking at Africa and Asia, where social, financial, and the health impact of COVID-19 will all be magnified. Concern number 4, the risk of virus-related disruption to public order, rioting, and looting in certain parts of the world. It's tempting to look at developing places, but for example, I see already the layoffs in the US labor market and a sharp rise in gun sales in the United States. Not a happy mix. The last one I would like to mention is the increased threat of theft from vacated business premises including the offices, now that most of us work from home. Back to you, Martin.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, thank you to all of you. And I think one of the things that Elizabeth said beforehand is that it might be very similar, but actually there are quite a lot of differences there. One of the themes running through your talks, though, was the issue of how long this can last before, and I'm talking, of course, about the pandemic, but I mean the security implications. Roger, you were about to talk about the risks, and I guess you've been at the forefront longer in Italy. This danger, the longer it goes on, the more difficult it becomes, the more serious the security implications. Perhaps that's a statement of fact. Do you think the security response is there to cope with that in the long run? If not, how do you see it going?
Well, the way I see it going is it's not so much the problem of the amount of time this will go forward, because people amongst themselves have understood this. The problem that we're still having in this country is that we're not getting clear information, and we're getting promises that everybody knows can't be kept. And these are promises which say, we were supposed to, this period of lockdown, this is the third week of lockdown, was supposed to end on the 3rd of April. Now it's been put back to the 14th. We all know full well it won't end on the 14th. It's going to end maybe in May, maybe in June. We don't know. If by security we're talking about straightforward guarding of property, there's enough boots on the ground to handle that. If by security we're talking about other things, such as the fact that one of the ideas that's going around now is that in a month or so's time, they're going to gradually cut down the lockdown. This means, first of all, children and young people, then people slightly older, then the middle-aged, and then the older people. 3 or 4 groups of people are going to be allowed to circulate, but schools won't be opened until next year. We already have a problem with baby gangs in Naples and Bari and Catania and Palermo. Who's going to look after that? With all these children running around without knowing what to do. The other big problem is the amount of money that is needed to be given to people who will be starving. These people are going to become foot soldiers for organised crime. We've not had any real incidents so far. There have been a couple which I think were faked up by organised crime, and organised crime is fanning the flames. Plus we have a highly irresponsible media who too are looking for news, and the one incident was blown up. I think if we're talking in terms of manpower, yes, there's enough. If we're talking in terms of cooperation, private, public, it is a big problem. And unless the public sector decides they really want to cooperate with the private, not the other way around, there will be very big problems.
Very interesting. Rajiv, if I could come to you about similarly, because you are very clearly at a different stage. One of the questions we've got, Roger's raised there about certain groups being identified. In his case, he was talking about breaking the lockdown first. One of the questions is, of course, that this is particularly difficult for minority groups. And you mentioned in your talk that migrant workers, for example, were going to be disproportionately problematic. I wonder whether you could just comment on where you are in your understanding of their needs and what their reactions are likely to be, and how we can begin to think about managing that response.
Okay, all right. As we are slightly behind as a situation in our country as compared to the other countries, especially Italy. So the mental unrest amongst these people have just started to begin. However, government is taking appropriate steps by the day. See, everything with such a large population, our strength and our problem, both are same, our population. Since we have a very large population, and what happens in a situation of panic is that people follow, people follow each other. So if one person is saying that he has decided to leave his working station, is going back to the hometown, hundreds and thousands will follow. There was a very scary situation in New Delhi 3 days ago at one of the interstate bus terminals, where thousands of people, were gathered to leave New Delhi, and there was no bus service, and I mean, to the surprise, for myself, and I'm sure for many people, started to walk down to their hometown as long as 800 kilometers. And some of them have actually walked. Some have finished 200, 300, 400 kilometers. A couple of people died on the way. It's a panic situation. Of course, with such a large population and manage huge lengths and breadths across the country, government is taking steps day by day. As on today, it's looked like that government had understood this problem. Unfortunately, it was not addressed neither by the central government nor by the state governments a couple of days ago. But as on date, the temporary shelters have been provided to them. The adequate food has been provided to them. For the time being, it looks like under control. And the another unfortunate problem in our country is that we are too religious a country. We have so many religions followed extensively, and this is being a festival time, and most of the religions followed, especially one particular religion. To contain the religious people from meeting each other, going to temples, mosques, churches, etc., has been challenged for various governments, and we have seen a recent example again yesterday that a lot of people from a particular region were gathered in a place of worship. These are certain problems as of now which we as a country are facing as a challenge. As I said, that government is taking adequate steps. Majority of the people have understood that yes, it is a problem. Majority of the people are following the lockdown guidelines. Majority of the people have are following the government directives. Managing such a large population, migrant workers, as I said, is a problem. People who have kind of lost job or have nothing to do as of now, who have been assured by the government, who have been assured by the organization that they will be taken care. But the question is how long? Since we do not know that we have reached in stage 3 or not as yet. We are seeing the trends in the other countries look like we are. I think we have to cross. The worst is yet to come, in our country. So,
thank you, Reggie.
So far, so good. Yeah.
Let me now, Elizabeth, in your opening remarks, you were quite positive about some of the things that Roger was raising as an issue there. You were saying that the communication's been good, and that there's a big agreement between the police and the government who seem to be aligned. And yet already we're beginning to see signs that people are finding it stressful. Can I just be very succinct here, because I want to get others in here as well if I can.
Of course.
To what extent do you think, in not having the problems that Roger raised were going on in Italy, that the stresses aren't going to manifest themselves in some awful way pretty soon? I mean, there are others who are saying it's just too much to ask. Organised crime is getting active, criminals are getting restless, and they're seizing opportunities. Wake up, United Kingdom.
Yes.
You're not quite in that boat yourself.
I have more faith in our law enforcement and government than that. But what I would say, in answer to Roger's comments, and in some way Rajiv's as well, is that communication is key. Without knowledge, people make up their own stories and they follow their own paths. So communication by the people that are leading us is absolutely crucial. And those messages need to be clear and factual. And I salute the British government, because what they've said right from day one is we are following the science. So we're not making it up. We're not saying, like President Trump, bless his heart, this is all going to be over by Easter and there'll only be 12 cases. They are following the science. They've modelled it. and so have our law enforcement officers. The National Cybercrime Centre is well aware of what might happen and what is already happening in the realm of cybercriminality. They are ramped up. They are issuing advice to businesses and to individuals. And really, it's our job as professionals to make sure that the people, our supply chains, the people we work with, have that information. If they don't look to us as professionals in this area and look to us for guidance, then really we are failing our supply chains and our colleagues.
Okay, I'm going to come, if I might just come to Michelle. Michelle, thank you. Michelle, again, you've posted put a picture in terms of how it could go, and you've got various options, and you painted quite a good picture of how Netherlands society was coping. Do you sense that that is because of the nature of Dutch society? Do you consider this to be part of the very, very good messaging? Do you fear some of the dangers that Rogers has raised are likely or could occur anytime soon?
No, I think there's huge regional differences, you know, around the globe. I mean, if I look at the, you know, my responsibilities for, let's say, Germany, Switzerland, Amsterdam, you know, we're seeing an extraordinary emphasis on business continuity preparedness. And the trick is, how do we bring our companies through an economically difficult time? And we've got our eye on that ball, and we're aiming for the future. It's all about business continuity preparedness, and the ordinary security risk management measures will typically suffice with some tweak and variation. But normally, what we would do should be enough for this time. That's clearly not the case in some other parts of the world. You know, and for example, in our holding, that includes Brazil, Bangladesh, Mexico, Hong Kong. You know, each area needs to be looked at specifically. Very good to ensure that you're aware of what the local guidance is. Follow the advice of the national health authorities locally. You don't want to be in violation with that. You know, you want to make sure that you keep your workforce informed of what is locally relevant, other than, you know, what would be wishful thinking in other parts of the world. And I think that in areas where we could expect larger trouble, that's where the security measures, you know, are geared towards, you know, dealing with unrest, mass unemployment, you know, but that is certainly not the case in Northern Europe at the moment.
Just very succinctly, if I could, Roger, to come back to you. What we're seeing here, and I think it was Michelle gets this right, is varying greatly around the world. I mean, what needs to happen? In fact, I'll ask all of you this. Headline issue, thinking of the security sector, what needs to happen next in your country in order for security to be seen to be on top of this and to actually be on top of it? Headline issues, where do we need to look? Roger first.
Well, I'm afraid private security does not really have much to say in the issue at the moment. This is all firmly in the hands of the public sector. And when I say firmly in the hands, I mean the public sector is controlling everything, but there are divisions amongst them. We are seeing long discussions every day on the TV between various sectors of the public sector. We're seeing discussions day by day on this, but we're not seeing the public sector reaching out to the private sector. So the private sector is just there waiting.
I guess the thing is, though, Roger, what's going to change that? I mean, because in many ways, I mean, many private spaces, many public spaces are actually protected by private security. Retail environments often are. The reality is that not of the national infrastructure in many countries has corporate security or private security as its key element. Is this in part it not speaking up for itself?
Well, up to a stage, yes, because we're living in a situation that started in 1931. It was reconfirmed in 1947, 1948, and the companies that have managed to survive and prosper are quite happy to survive and prosper with rules and regulations that quite honestly don't work. Let me just give you one quick example. You mentioned the retail sector. Security inside the retail sector, security in matches and shows or anything else like that is provided by private investigation companies. Security companies cannot operate within a building where people are working, because security guards by law must carry guns, they must be in a uniform, the guns must be seen. They are therefore not allowed, that's regarding the security law. Then there's a labour law which says a security guard cannot set foot where anybody is working. Now, you need retail security. Retail security is being provided by licensed private investigation companies, but they're not on the list of companies that the government last week gave permission to operate. So we've got the security guard standing outside, nobody inside, because the private investigators have not received permission from the government to operate. So there's at the moment no hired private security. Now, there are various associations here have written to the ministries, they're complaining about it, but they're not being listened to. That's one small example, but that's the way things are badly run here.
Okay. Thank you, Roger. Just once again, I'm going to ask you just to be very succinct, because we've only got a few minutes left, and I want to just make a few points. Rajiv, just in 30 seconds or so, what do you see as the main opportunities for the private sector and corporate security sector out there in India? Is this a chance for them to shine, and are they?
See, most of what Roger said is also applicable here, but most of the private sector, even some of the government sector, is guarded by private security here. Private security guards is one of the largest numbers in India. 9 million people work here as security guard. However, you know, if the businesses are shut down, then the numbers are reduced. But as of now, other than, I mean, of course, this is a state subject, and these local police or state agencies are doing their job as of now, but private security is playing an extremely critical and major role as on date in India. If situation worsens from here, then I think you know, paramilitary or perhaps the army would be called if the situation goes out of control. But as of now, the police is doing good enough, and private security industries is, in terms of the man guarding companies, are doing an extremely wonderful job as on date. Whosoever is doing, you know, whosoever is doing the job, it has been reduced, the number is reduced, the responsibilities may have increased, but the number has reduced. But whosoever is performing his duty is doing an extremely wonderful job as on date.
Thank you, Rajiv. I'm going to ask exactly the same, if I could, to just my final two panelists. And just headline issues. Are there opportunities for the private and corporate security sector here? And what are they? 30 seconds, if you wouldn't mind, listeners, we're running out of time.
Certainly, the biggest risk to us really is home working, and people aren't perhaps used to security in quite the same way from their home as they were within a workplace. There is definitely an opportunity for the private security industry to educate and help lock down systems to ensure they are more robust.
Thank you very much. Michelle, good question to ask you as well. Are there opportunities here, and what are they?
Yeah, I think for security, the opportunities are there in, you know, in trying to be an important element in fixing this global pandemic. The trick now is not to look at the issues in isolation. The trick is to look at this as a public-private problem that needs to be solved, you know, with the cooperation of everybody involved. And for people with a corporate role, to me, this means making sure that security is heard in the boardroom, that security's considerations are taken as part and parcel of what you need to do as a wider company or as a wider organization.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, thank you very much indeed to the panel. I mean, what's come through this, I think nicely point made there, is that in reality, the world's a very diverse place, and the sorts of issues that are cropping up, quite logically, vary markedly by country. Depending on laws, depending on cultures, depending on faith, but also, it seems, it depends on where they are in the process. What we take away from Italy, quite clearly, is this issue of communication. In fact, I was reading a book recently about most important things to remember in a crisis, and the issue of communication was the most commonly featured issue. So interesting that you should raise that, Roger. And it seems though crime problems are only just beginning to emerge, and time will tell how they do so. And what is clear from what you were saying is that these can be diverse, they can be serious, and the implications can be heartfelt. There's slightly more optimism, I think, from Elizabeth and Michelle, that their countries are there to cope. It will be interesting to see
Martin,
how that pans out. Tricky though this situation is. What we will do is we'll put this webinar online from tomorrow. We will provide a summary of some of these key thoughts. Clearly, the object for today was to start to identify what these issues are. And as the seminars go forward, we will tackle them more in depth. As you will see, there are more to come. We've got on Thursday, 48 hours from now, in fact, is security delivering or failing in this crisis? Our speakers there will be Stephanie Berguinen from France, Yvan de Meismaker from Belgium, Volker Wagner from Germany, and Rick Menfield from the UK. Another stellar lineup of world-renowned experts. More information on all of these can be found on either the OSPAs or the TECAs or the Perpetuity website. We'd also like, if we could, to get you involved in our current thought leadership project, which is about careers in security and what this means for people entering and wanting to pursue a career in security. We'll write you with a link after this. And hopefully we can get your feedback on how we can make the circumstances of today key learning points for improvements in security tomorrow. We've had a fantastic turnout for this webinar. Thank you very much indeed for doing that. We appreciate you tuning in. Thank you very much indeed to my panel of experts. Thank you also for being relatively succinct, given how much you could have said and how much we'd like you to have said. So on the Security and Crime YouTube from tomorrow, you'll see more. It just reminds, the final thing from me is just to say to everybody, thank you very much indeed. Stay safe, and look forward hopefully to seeing you at one of the future webinars. Take care.